A reading from the Gospel of Matthew. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" And he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Well, this is a terrific passage for us to have a short reflection on one level. On the other hand, it's as complex as it is simple, right? Or it's simple but not easy. And Jesus, of course, is in the midst of parrying various challenges to his authority and his knowledge. And when asked what's the most important commandment, he comes back, as any good Jewish teacher would, with the Shema. This is from the Jewish tradition, the love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and body and strength. And then they ask, what about the next? And he says the second is like it, also drawn from the tradition, which is expressed actually in many of the world's religions in some form or another, although usually in the negative. It's usually expressed, do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you. But Jesus turns it around and puts it in the positive and says, treat others the way you'd like to be treated yourself. So love others, love your neighbor as yourself. I think many of us believers in our tradition and others will listen to this two-part commandment, this summary of the law, and really kind of naturally settle in one place or the other. I worked in a diocese previous to this one that used to have a bumper sticker that said, love God, love your neighbor, change the world. And I always objected to that because I said that leaves out an important part of this, which is love God, love your neighbor, love yourself. And that is a dynamic that many of us can wrestle with from time to time. So I think it's important not to lop that off of Jesus' summary of the law. But nonetheless, we are drawn one way or another. And when I normally think about this summary of the law, I kind of gravitate toward that second part, loving neighbor and loving self. How can I be? How can I act? How can I do? How can I be in my life in ways that demonstrates, as part of my relationship to God, how do I treat others? And as part of my living into the person God's calling me to be, how do I open myself to seeing myself with the same eyes of love that God sees me? How do I love myself? But what I think I want to concentrate on, therefore, today, and just invite you to come with me on this, is how does God know that I love God? I mean, I kind of often think, well, if I just work on that second part, if I'm working out loving my neighbor and loving myself, that's just going to make God happy. And I think that probably does. But it does occur to me that loving God is the first and greatest commandment. Love God. And how do we do that? And of course, there's a whole book about love languages, and you got to wonder what God's love language is. It's probably all of them. But I am going to take this as an invitation this day and on into my weekend to think about that first commandment, the first and greatest commandment, to love God with all my heart, with all my heart. And I think the very least thing I could do to express that I love someone is to just simply say, I love you. And I think I do that indirectly in a lot of ways with God. I know I do that indirectly. I try to live a life that shows that I love God, but I think I'm going to just take maybe the next week or so, and every time I wake up or go to sleep, or maybe even both, just let my first and my last word for the day be, I love you, God. God, I love you. That's it. Nothing else, just I love you. And see how that works on my spirit, but also simply offer it to God as a sign and a very direct expression of the love that I actually do have for God, but just don't necessarily think about expressing. I think, oh, God's so secure, God doesn't need my affirmations, but the greatest and first commandment suggests otherwise. So I invite you to join me in that exercise. Shoot me a note and let me know how it goes for you. I'll try it and we'll see what it does for me. But I'm going to start each day and end each day letting God know that I love God. Just that simply. I love you, God. And we'll see where it takes us. And may God be with you. May your love with God be apparent to God. And may God bless you and keep you this day and always. Amen.